משמאל לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר. בינות אשר ירביצני, על מנוחות ינחלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי הלך בגצל מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. תשענת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדיפוני כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. With rod and staff you comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Eternal forever. Esainai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from the Eternal, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. Behold, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm and protect your soul. Adonai yishmor tzetecha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. May the Eternal guard your going and your coming, now and forevermore. Death has summoned our beloved Marion Kendis. Our souls cry out unto you, O God. What are we? Are we the creatures of dust whose destiny is but to return to the dust from which we came? The ancient sage has taught us the spirit of the human being is the lamp of the Eternal. Not even the darkness of death can extinguish the light which the Eternal has kindled in the sanctuary of the human soul. Therefore, O God, we thank you in this solemn hour for that which was deathless in the life of our cherished Marion, and which is now revealed to us in all of its beauty. For her love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For her companionship which we shared along life's path and which still continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and of her mind, which brought us joy and happiness and now have become a precious heritage of the Spirit. For all these and more, we give you our praise. Grant unto us, O God, the strength of all the generations of our people, who in the face of bereavement proclaimed, Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. God has given, God has taken away, still, blessed be the name of God. These are the days of the Jewish festival of Shavuot. Since you, Dana, Dan, and Lauren, and many of Marion's grandchildren were all confirmands of our temple, you will recall that this holiday follows 50 days after Passover. And this linkage between Passover and Shavuot reminds us that our liberation from Egypt was not just for freedom's sake, but was tied to receiving the Torah with directions for sustaining that liberty through proper conduct. Liberty is the central theme of this season. The Exodus produced physical liberty, and the Ten Commandments provided the liberated slaves with mental liberty, a prerequisite to sustain physical liberty and refrain from abusing it. As we read the Ten Commandments, we recognized the essence of our moral structure is based on our relationship with God, with duty to family, with observance to the Sabbath, and with respecting the basic rights of every human being. Some people get caught up in the societal appearances and niceties of life, sometimes setting aside these essential values. But Marion Kendis affirmed that these values were the ideals worthy of her attention. All the rest was unimportant to her. She held close a relationship with God, echoing through the generations the words her mother spoke upon leaving Kiev at the turn of the century. When you come to the crossing, the Lord will be with you. She lit her Sabbath candles every Friday night before letting her children go out on their way. And above all, she cared for her family and for every human being, bestowing upon them the dignity of their due. We might call her unconventional, but who's to say all the many conventions of her day were worthy of her mind, of her time, or of her heart? To her children, Dana, Dan, and Lauren, and her son and daughters-in-law, Paul and Sherry and Fern, to her grandchildren, Laura and Todd, Sarah and Becca, Hallie and Scott, and welcoming Jake into the family and her great-grandson, Jonas. And to her extended family, to we, her friends, we offer our deepest condolences. How blessed we all were to have Marion in our lives as she reached the ripe old age of 99. And how blessed you all were to know Marion and her loving care for you, even as you gave her so much more so. I met Marion in 1988 when I was just a young rabbi at our temple. At that time, she was very active in our Temple Women's Association. I saw her just about every Tuesday morning, as at that time, the group gathered to sew baby blankets and met to study Torah and discuss current events. She was often there with her sister Penny and her sister-in-laws, and sometimes she accompanied Dana and Fern or Sherry there for a luncheon. It was sort of how I got to know all the family. She instilled in each of you a special place for the temple. A bright and articulate woman, she had a beautiful, friendly smile that let you know immediately that she was approachable and that she would greet you with kindness. Over the last decade of years, her presence at functions waned, but never her warm, welcoming smile when I'd see her even at services. These were qualities she'd learned in her home. Marion was the daughter of Samuel and Sadie Berman, and she was close with her brother Robert, 2 years her senior, and even more so with her sister Penny, 10 years her junior, and for whom Marion was like a second mother. Her brother would live with her almost all of his life, and Penny and she would remain inseparable, even developing their own kind of language to accompany their antics and the fun they created together. The kids were often left to their own fun at home, and Marion made sure that that was how it was. Although her father was an engineer who helped design the Panama Canal and other historic structures, which took him away from home, his most important design and construction project would remain the family home at 1928 Cumberland Road. That is where Marion spent her formative years, and from there she would attend Cleveland Heights High School. Although it was the Depression era, she never gave in to the idea of those being difficult years, and she used her superior sewing skills to create dresses worthy of her stylish fashion, and she would wear to school dances. Marion was a beautiful, slim, and tall woman, and she brought elegance to whatever she wore. Dresses, never pants, paired with high heels and a bright color lipstick. But she was not all show. Led by her mother, whose vocation was as a reporter on the Canton newspaper, writing the church beat, Marion possessed a keen mind, and she loved reading newspapers. In fact, later in life, the Plain Dealer would pen an article about her reading every word of them and keeping many of them all around her for posterity. Because Marion was smart and sophisticated, she immediately began her studies at Florence Stone Mather, but these were interrupted by the family's need for her to go to work. When she returned to school a few years later, she majored in the science of nutrition to satisfy her interest in biochemistry. That was the only way a woman in those years could study in the science discipline. Upon graduation, the government screening for excellence in the sciences selected her to attend MIT. There she would transfer her knowledge to the field of metallurgy and contribute to the war in this way. A newspaper article in 1945 captured that time in her life with the simple headline, "Beauty and the Bullet." In the meantime, there was also a young man who she'd begun dating at Western Reserve during those years, who was all too happy to follow the movie star beauty with the superstar brains. The handsome Marion Kendis, smitten by Marion, would follow her to Boston, where he would study business at Harvard. Now that may sound like a romantic convergence of dreams, but for the young Marion, who had been having a lot of fun being one of the few women in her field and had many suitors soliciting her attention, his coming there kind of crimped her style. But her love for Lauren would eventually become the kind of devotion that romantic novels can only attempt to capture. Just before Lauren would be shipped off to his Navy post in 1943, they eloped, married by a rabbi on the Dayton base. When he returned, he began working with his brother Alan Kendis in a law firm, but shortly thereafter, he and Marion moved to Butler, Pennsylvania, where he entered the Berman family business of Keystone Pipe and Supply. About that time, Dana was born, and shortly thereafter, Dan. But by the time Marion was due with Lauren, the whole lot was ready to move back into the family home on Cumberland. It's hard to imagine that Marion would remain there from youth to her death, but that was her comfort and the backdrop to so many family memories. Marion and Lauren remained devoted to each other for almost 50 years. Dana, when you spoke about watching the love between your parents, your eyes watered with that fondness of memory, recognizing the incredible model that they had presented. They lived a simple life, homebodies who enjoyed Sunday night rides, family rides out to Chagrin Falls for ice cream, a kind of command performance apparently. And she was always delighted by the vase full of gardenias that Lauren made sure were around for her. Lauren knew well that Marion valued her liberty to choose her path in life without having to be encumbered by stereotypes for women of her day. Ahead of her time, she was into recycling, and rarely did things get thrown away, especially if they could be repurposed. Take, for example, the frozen orange juice plastic containers, which became a fine cup for the orange juice and more. Her idea of cooking was minimal but healthy. The emerging junk food industry found no friend in her kitchen. In fact, she was rarely to be found in her kitchen. Instead, as Paul quickly discovered at one of his first makeshift family dinners, which this time consisted of beef heart sandwiches, I think, dinner would be served on paper plates in the living room, surrounded by books. And incidentally, apparently Paul, trying to make a good impression, politely ate the whole sandwich before Dana took a first bite and refused it out of hand. Just as she was not a proponent of kitchen religion, so she was not a promoter of kitchen use. Instead, Marion was a voracious reader of books and of every word of a newspaper, from headlines to sports and business, all her life. And she was most at home with ideas and discussions about the concerns of the day. Marion would be at the Democratic Party forefront, helping to further progressive issues, proud that she had met John F. Kennedy and Adlai Stevenson. She would volunteer to distribute literature and then send Dana out the door. She would volunteer at the voting booths for decades. When protests erupted over invasion of Cambodia, she was a strong proponent advocating against our invasion. And she helped not only at Temple and for Jewish causes of her time, but she was active with the emerging women's organizations like Hadassah, where she led talks on world affairs, and ORT, for which she wrote and published the Bulletin of considerable size. Knowledge and education defined her, and so not surprisingly, Marion was a strong voice in the PTA at each of her children's schools, and she ran the yearly bike rodeo, where children competed at bicycle safety skills and acquired expertise in this mode of transportation. Marion was a stickler for transportation safety, and she would rarely let anyone else drive her children, the consequence of which was that since she was always late, the three of her children and others were often left waiting for her to pick them up. Marion was busy also with her kids as she became a Cub Scout den mother and a Brownie leader. But lest you think she was only responsible, she had a fun side as well. A rather unconventional mother, she would visit the 18-year-old Lauren at university and supply him with Boone's apple wine, making him the hit of his floor. And she was ready to hit the bar scene with Dana in Columbus, visiting every one of them in one night. She liked the shock value of her actions and her words, and she had some sage advice that would make it through her generations. She taught lessons like, wait for this one, variety is the spice of life, referring to the men who were like streetcars. Another one would always be coming around the corner, she'd say. And though she was at the forefront of women's liberation, she did not lose compromise on telling Rebecca's whole college house the adage, the barer the better, when it came to formal dresses. And if you started to talk about one of them, she had one of the boys that you were meeting, she had two questions for you. Is he Jewish, and is he from Cleveland? She wanted her family to stay close. That would become even more important to her when the love of her life became ill and she needed all of you close by to help her. She'd tell you, Lauren, she'd tell you that Lauren took good care of all of you and that you were all going to take good care of him. Dan and Lauren would only half-jokingly say that their parents' investment in them became their godsend as they put their medical school education to good use. But it was a full family effort, with Fern instituting having them over for Sunday night dinners, and Sherry taking Shabbat dinners, and Dana adding weekdays to the family holidays that were already hers. You all made sure to pack leftovers for the next day so that both of them would have something nutritious to eat. By 1993, when Lauren passed, these patterns were well established and continued on. Marion would always be grateful to all of you for your kindness and your devotion, and she repaid it in simple and profound ways. She was the favorite babysitter for the older grandchildren, teaching them to perform the household chores she despised by bringing her laundry over for Laura to do at age 5 and teaching her how to iron her grandfather's shirts just so. She demonstrated to Todd once at a favorite Florida restaurant that you should drink your milk, even if it came in the little sizes appropriate for coffee. For all of you, the many opportunities to be together brought you closer with your beams, your beamer, your BB, anything but grandma was okay. She had favorite nicknames for you too. She would refer to you as her nieces and nephews, even her little friends, to avoid disclosing her age, and she never aged in her mind either. She kept you entertained as she marched to her own drummer, and she taught you important life lessons. By example of who her friends were, she instilled in each of you a value of being non-judgmental. Unique personalities she would show you were opportunities to meet remarkable people from all walks of life. A creative, outside-the-box kind of thinker, she taught you to be strong and independent in your thinking, and that was especially true for the female grandchildren. While she may have quoted to her grandchildren, to her own children, "When I want your opinion, I'll give it to you," and she may not have initially been ready to welcome female lawyers like Laura and soon Becca, or a doctor in Hallie, the truth is that she probably had a stronger hand in shaping your bright minds and your compassionate hearts than she realized. She was a strong advocate for you to speak your mind by insisting it never hurts to ask, and she made sure that Sarah was able to stand up for what she wanted in life too. She also managed to get into your minds her idea of waste not, want not mentality, telling Scott you'll putrefy if you don't eat your vegetables, and reminding you not to be a waster-all for leaving them behind. For Hallie and for Jake, being at your wedding was a source of joy to her. And Jonas coming forward was a way of keeping her mind open and young. For all of you, your beams was a source of inspiration, afforded you many laughs, allowed you to recognize what it meant to be a character, but also to have character. And when life was not so comedic, perhaps that was when Marion was at her best. When tragedy struck with the death of her granddaughter Rachel, she was the one who took Sherry under her wing and brought her into Temple for a sense of community again. She was a woman of devout faith and believed in the purpose of things even when one didn't know them. I think that's how her philosophy made it into her journal, a journal she kept writing. She wrote, "Life can be filled with pain and tragedy and still possess great beauty too, and still be worth living." Marion suffered the loss of her loved ones, her brother in 1989, her husband in 1993, her sister in 2002, and sadly much of her memory too. And each loss depleted her cup. Nonetheless, she knew that her cup did indeed runneth over, because of the love that kept pouring in to replenish it with the blessings of all her generations of her family. You were each so dedicated to her and made sure that she was able to stay in the beautiful home she cared so deeply about. A woman who celebrated the liberties in her life to do with it as she saw fit, who abandoned the conventions of her eras to capture the opportunities for life and learning. Marion's life lessons remain our blessings. Her humor, her wit, her dedication to speaking the truth, to living the ethical life, and to courageously going after one's dreams. These are what will continue to inspire her loved ones from generation to generation. May her memory be our precious blessing as we wish her Godspeed. Amen. I'd like to invite her granddaughter, Becca, to come forward and to share a few of the family memories as well.
My Bima was a wonderful storyteller. Growing up, Beams would tell me many stories, but one always stood out as my favorite. This particular story was about a dress she wore to a school dance she attended while she was an undergraduate student at Floristone Mather. Inspired by a strapless red gown worn by Betty Davis in the movie Jezebel, Beams went to the discount section of a local department store and found an inexpensive dress to serve as her blank canvas. She then dyed the light-colored dress a deep garnet red, removed the sleeves and made other alterations, and attached a gold chain necklace just like the one in the movie, she would say. Beams would proudly tell me that she was the first person to wear a strapless gown at Mather, and she had men lining up to dance with her all night. Growing up, I loved repeating this story to my friends, bragging about what a trend-setting grandmother I had. As I grew a bit older, I was able to appreciate the skill, creativity, and determination that it took to recreate a movie star outfit with next to no budget. A child of the Depression, my Bima was truly skilled at making something beautiful out of very little. Then when I was in college, I did a little research into the movie to try to find a picture of the dress that inspired her, which, by the way, she described with impeccable accuracy. The greatest revelation of this research, however, came from the movie's plotline. I learned that the main character, Julie, wore this strapless red gown to a ball where all of the unmarried women were expected to wear white. She was met with disdainful reactions from the other attendees, and her fiancé decided to teach her a lesson by forcing her to continue dancing after all the other dancers left the floor, so appalled by her choice of outfit. This choice ultimately caused her to lose her fiancé, and the movie's general message was that Julie was wrong to wear such an inappropriate dress. Naturally, Bima watched this movie, disregarded any lessons about appropriate conduct and attire for an unmarried lady, and decided that she had to have a strapless red ball gown of her own. Never before have I so appreciated my Bima's chutzpah, her forward thinking, and her unwillingness to let others tell her what she could or couldn't do. This story is just one example of a general trend in my Bima's life. Rules didn't apply to her. Social norms didn't apply to her. She refused to let normative expectations of any kind stifle the way that she lived her life. I believe that Beams was often very much aware of the rules that she was breaking and the boundaries that she was pushing. After all, she loved nothing more than shocking people with outrageous words or behavior. However, I think that other times she lived her life generally unaware of or unconcerned with how the rest of the world thought she should act. This year I bought Bima Jezebel on DVD for Mother's Day. I was so excited to finally be able to watch the movie together and hoped that it would spur her memory to elaborate more on my favorite story. Unfortunately, we never had the chance to watch it before she became ill. But this past week, as I watched the movie next to her, I found myself getting extremely frustrated with the main character as she begged her fiancé to let her stop dancing, rather than owning how amazing she looked in that gown and enjoying all of the attention of having all eyes on her while they danced alone. And with that frustration came a realization of just how much my Bima had rubbed off on me. My Beams was eccentric, strong, intelligent, and beautiful. There are so many lessons that you taught me throughout my life, and I will cherish all of them forever, but none more than the value of living life on your own terms, something that my Bima did until her very last breath. And that accomplishment is not just something that we should admire, it's something that we should all celebrate.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining, ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו ונם. יש אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר, כאשר הם עצמם אינם עוד בתוכנו. אורות אלה המבהיקים בחשכת הליל, הם שמרים לאדם את הדרך, as we live our days. These are the ways we remember.
Each of us has precious memories of Marion. We take a few moments now as we silently compose the eulogy of our own hearts. Yehiu l'ratzon imrei fi, v'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. May not only the words that we speak, but even our most precious and private memories be acceptable to you, our God, our rock, and our Redeemer. Amen. We ask God to accept Marion's soul with the words of El Malay. Please rise.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, עמסי מנוחה נוחנה תחת כנפך השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. את נשמת יקירנו, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן, תהא מנוחתו. אנא ברחמים אסתירהו, בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וטרור בטרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Marion Kendis, who has entered unto eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. Be thou her inheritance, and may she rest in peace, and let us answer, Amen. You may be seated. Our service continues at the Mayfield Cemetery, and the family invites you, following the service, to the home of Dana and Paul Lefkowitz, which is on 24425 Hilltop Drive, and following that tomorrow at Fern and Lauren's home on 24802 Wimbledon Road. Family who wishes can contribute to the Temple Women's Association Fund at our temple, or to the Vinnie Hospice Palliative Care at Montefiore.